Good afternoon to you. And good evening to you from wherever you are joining us this moment. It is Mayegun Live. Or should we just say the brunch time with Mayegun? It is brunch time with Mayegun. Kindly read the caption of this broadcast, the description of this broadcast. Like it, share it, invite your friends, invite your not so friendly friends, and tell everybody that cares to know that we Mayegun today. Africa Wahala, you joined us this early. Nice one, Baba. Milady, Ada Zion, thanks for waiting. And to everybody that will be tuning in this moment, what you have to do is to make sure that you share this broadcast before you settle down. I know. Thank you, Motide. So I apologize for the late start. I have some workers in the studio, they are doing something in the studio. And therefore, you may be seeing the, hearing the pak, in the background, okay? Do not panic. It's because I'm not alone in the studio this afternoon. But while we just put that aside, a lot is also going on. And from the rider or the caption of this broadcast, we are going to go to New York, a place where Shettima was sent to go and appeal for a debt relief. Ladies and gentlemen, Nigeria is in mess, financial, economic mess, because of the APC, Egbekegbe's mismanagement of Nigeria's economy, one, as well as the corruption that has now become institutionalized in that contraption. So, yesterday, in New York City, where Shettima, Dele Alakori, and few other clowns, right, are there to attend the UNGA 79th or 79th UNGA, which simply means that United Nations General Assembly meeting in New York City, where people just go and read, they just go over there, they give them podium, they read sometimes to the empty room, and according to them, that is them representing their countries and speaking to world leaders, whatever. So Shettima, who was like 11th hour, replacement for Tifnumbu, appeared in that same room, and he said a lot of things that are pretty much nonsense. But the highlight of what he went to present to them in the United Nations General Assembly empty room was the debt relief for Nigeria. Do you remember when Obasanjo came to power in 1999? He embarked upon this global, this global tour where he was meeting with different governments all over the world. And apart from asking them to please come and save this contraption, after the military, handed over to him and they left. So it was like a good selling point to go to the rest of the world and say, listen, we have suffered the military program for a while, and now we are a democracy. But this military have destroyed Nigeria, destroyed the economy, so this democracy can survive without your support. They have impoverished Nigeria, and they have dipped Nigeria into indebtedness. At the time, the total debt of Nigeria in 1999 was put at somewhere around the $46 or $47 billion. That was massive then, though, right? So Obasanjo finally got a reprieve or a relief from the debtors, IMF, World Bank, okay, where they wrote off at least over 60% of Nigeria's debt. And they told Nigeria to pay about 30% of the debt. And finally, they Shah made the deal, Nigeria's debt was reduced to zero. Unfortunately, when the same Obasanjo was leaving, he eventually left a debt of about $3 to $4 billion. But he also had a lot to show for it. At the time, then Yar'Adua came, then Jonathan came. So by the time Jonathan was leaving in 2015, the debt of Nigeria, foreign debt of Nigeria was put at, listen to this, $13.5 billion. Okay. And Nigeria could service our debt conveniently at the time. Nigeria was making enough money from the crude oil, even though they told us that most of that was also stolen. But no, Nigeria was paying back our debt. There was no crude oil, stealing of crude oil so much at the time. Then the people that shouted change, 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 they took over and everything changed. So that's where we're going to kind of take the whole start from now. Although 9 years after Jonathan left, Goodluck Egbere Jonathan, 9 years after he left, Nigeria's debt has now jumped to almost $150 billion. You heard me right. $150 billion. And there is absolute near nothing to show for it. Right? So when he handed over to Bukwari in 2015, Nigeria's debt was $13.5 billion. The Nigeria Naira exchange for dollar was 150 Naira to $1. The liter of petroleum in Nigeria in 2015 was 87 Naira per liter. So then when you fast forward that to 2023, Nigeria's debt, when Bukwari was leaving, was left at $105 billion. And the exchange rate of a Nigerian Naira to dollar was left at 710 Naira to $1. And when Jonathan was leaving, the oil theft in Nigeria on record, right, was 50,000 barrels of crude oil are said to be stolen from Nigeria every day. Also, the Nigeria refineries, the Warri refinery, Port Harcourt refinery, and then, these refineries were working at 50% capacity today. What is that guy's name? Aliko Dangote said in an interview 2 days ago, he said, now that he is refining the crude oil in Nigeria, for the first time in Nigeria history, Nigeria will not be importing fuel, Babawere. Nigeria started importing 100% of our fuel from 2016 when this APC, Egbekegbe, took over. I know some of these things are going to be sounding like ancient to you. 87 Naira per liter. Yeah, it was 87 Naira per liter 9 years ago. And then Nigeria was not losing the oil revenue per se, even though those who are stealing the oil revenue themselves, right? Goodluck Ebele Jonathan and his gang, that they were told that they were the enemies of Nigeria. They still had enough to pay and service Nigeria's debt. Fast forward to 2016, Jonathan that was paying 800 between, listen to this, Jonathan was paying between 600 billion naira and 800 billion naira every year for fuel subsidy. When he said he wanted to remove the subsidy in 2012, which you all remember what happened, right? Nigeria was paying annually for subsidy 600 billion naira. And Jonathan said this was not sustainable, that this money could go into so many things. Let's remove it, okay? Since Nigeria have the refining capacity of about 50%, and only 50% is being imported, right? Let's invest this money, improve the refinery, and anybody who wants to bring this extra fuel into Nigeria, they could do so at their own cost and sell it at whatever price they want to sell it. while the Nigerian government will continue to refine locally for local consumption. You know, those who are actually behind the oil marketers, the fuel subsidy, beneficiary. One of them, is the governor of Ogun State today, the dubious Dapo of aiding oil. He was supposed to be in jail, but because of the protest of 2012, that saved him. And since then, he's been vying to be governor, so that he could possibly escape prosecution. His prayer got answered in 2019, but I mean, things were already gone then, right? So at the time, back then, that you were buying a liter of petroleum for 87 naira per liter, and you were paying over 600 billion naira for subsidy, right? Then 3 years later, when APC, Egbekegbe, took over, the refineries in Nigeria suddenly died. It just suddenly died. No longer producing anything anymore. So Nigeria now depended on importation of fuel. At the time, the NNPC Nigeria suddenly became the sole importer of petroleum products. That was the beginning of your nightmare. That was the beginning of your suffering. The ones that you are unable to get out from today. This was the door that they opened to criminals, to thieves. Nigeria started losing over 700,000 barrels of crude oil every day. Nigeria lost, under these criminals, Nigeria lost over 200 million barrels of crude oil in a space of 7 years. No joke, Baba. Nigeria was losing, calculate it now. Nigeria was losing nearly 21 million barrels of crude oil every month. So God knows who. People will just bring vessel to Nigeria water. Ondo, Delta, Port Harcourt, Bayelsa. They will just bring vessel, load the vessel. And suddenly, NNPC started losing money. They no longer make money from crude oil because people are stealing the crude oil. The oil production in Nigeria dropped from about 1.8 million barrels of crude oil every day. It dropped down to 800,000 barrels every day. And where is the money? The money also stopped coming. NNPC that used to remit money to Nigeria and say, oh, we sold this crude oil, we sold that crude oil. Suddenly, they were not remitting money anymore. They will wait for like a month. The NNPC won't remit any money. To cover the gap, the Nigerian, the Boko Haram's government, they started printing money. They started printing money and sharing the money to states as allocation so that the money they were supposed to be making from crude oil that was supposed to be shared, they covered that up. I know some of you remember Malamu, and they discovered over 200 million, over 200, was it over, oh, sorry, I think it was a 27 million barrel of crude oil stolen from Nigeria, and they traced it to China, and China made a deal that, okay, they will pay. When they paid the money, over, $7 billion or so dollars, when they paid the money also disappeared because Malamu, and his gang, they shared the money. Now, here is the story of what Nigeria has now become today. Nigeria started borrowing money like never seen before to pay salary, and suddenly the debt of Nigeria jumped from $13.5 billion up to 105 billion in a space of 8 years. This was the end of Nigeria economically. So the carcass, which Tifnumbu and his gang have now inherited, is not being saved. So you know, okay? So between just 15 months, between May 2023 and September 2024, Nigeria's debt is now hovering between $145 and $150 billion. And IMF, the one that has been giving them this money, and the others, they started setting the pace. The monetary policy for Nigeria. Go and float your naira. Go and devalue the naira. If you want this $1 billion, go and devalue your this. If you want to, go and devalue that. Until Nigeria naira became trash. There is nobody to blame now. If APC, Egbekegbe that destroyed Nigeria, suddenly feels like, and I remember very well saying, these guys who are borrowing this money, they have no plan of paying the money back. Oh. They have no plan of paying the money back. To them, if you want to take crude oil, come and take crude oil. We know they pay any money back. Nigeria got so bad under Buhari that Nigeria was using, because there was not much money coming in anymore. Nigeria was using over 90% of our own revenue to service debts. Why they are telling all of you that PDP looted the money, PDP will destroy Nigeria, and they sold you that lie. A lot of you actually believed it for years. Why they killed you? Pata pata. IMF started setting the monetary policies for them. How much is your naira today? No, go and change it. We cannot, you don't get anything we need. We can't give you this money if you don't have anything to sell to us per se. How much do you want to change the naira now? The dollar? I said it's 150. I mean 200 naira. No. That's rubbish. Which you don't have anything to back up your naira. Nothing. You know what? Go and devalue it. Go and float it. They started setting monetary policies for them to the point that today Nigeria naira have lost more than 1,000% of its value. From 155 naira to $1. Nigeria naira is now 1,680 naira to $1. Complete trashy toilet paper. That's what your naira. But they gave them money to make it worse. Nigeria started paying more for subsidy. You get that? After killing the refineries, or they told us the refineries were dead. Even though some people said that that may not be true. That you see these criminal politicians, they were supposed to be given the same China treatment. You saw this Chinese treatment, what they did to their corrupt criminals in China. That is a death sentence. Some said, no be all this fuel you are using in Nigeria, no be everything that they import. That these refineries are still working. But because of the corruption, it is better to tell you that they are not working, so that they can continue to tell you that they are paying subsidy. Nigeria, divide their 600 billion, divide it by 12. 600 billion or divided by 12, what you go get? No be 50 billion. Yeah, 50 billion. 50 billion every month. Jonathan, the corrupt Jonathan, was paying 50 billion naira on subsidy every month. You were buying a liter of petrol for 87 naira per liter. Remember, $1 was 155 naira official, and black market 199 naira per 199 naira to $1. So Jonathan was paying 50 billion naira for subsidy. Buhari came, and suddenly subsidy first jumped to 1 trillion a year, 2 trillion, 3 trillion, 4 trillion. By the time Buhari was leaving, Nigeria was paying 5 trillion naira, 5 trillion. And when you divide all of that, Nigeria was paying over 400 billion naira every month on petrol subsidy, right? And you were buying the liter of petrol for how much? People who complained about buying a liter of petroleum for 125 naira per liter because Jonathan removed subsidy, they said, now war go lay down. Now war the whole thing go hand into. Jonathan don't finish you. Blah, blah, blah. They now told you to maintain. Give Buhari time. By the time Buhari was done with you, they were paying over 400 billion naira every month on subsidy. Over 400 billion. And over 5 trillion naira a year on the same subsidy. So some people said, oh, all these things that they import. The refineries are working. As the entire system is being so corrupt, it is whatever they say to you that you have to take. As they are sharing, see this guy, Timi Presiva, that became the Minister of Petroleum under Buhari. I don't know if some of you probably remember that. I know some of you will remember the story, the lies that Obasanjo spent $16 billion on $16 billion on electricity, on power. I know some of you helped them spread that lie too, that Obasanjo spent $16 billion on power. Obasanjo never spent $16 billion on power. But you see this Olori Buku APC, they repeated the lie and repeated it and repeated it and repeated until a lot of you actually believed it. Do you know that under Bukwari, they spent over $1.6 billion? That one is confirmed. $1.6 billion to revive Nigeria refinery. And they continue to tell you that it's not working. Even up till now, they are still spending, they claim to be spending. What they are doing is that they are sharing the money. And then they will come back together and write figure and say, how many liters of petrol should we say we are subsidizing this month? Just say 800 million liters. Okay, 800 million. And how much is the subsidy? Go and do the math. Go and do the math. 6 trillion naira. 6 trillion. Okay. They pay subsidy and you are still paying through your noses. Your businesses were struggling, suffering until Tifnumbu came. All this rip-off is called institutionalized corruption. And on the other hand, everywhere Bokwari went, it's like the normal Alimajiri, Bambi Allah with plates. Everywhere he went, they want to borrow money. Everywhere. There's nowhere Bokwari went that he didn't ask for money to borrow. By the time it was done, Nigeria was deep and deep in debt. When he printed 27.5 trillion naira in 8 years, when they converted that to dollar, that is over $50 billion. Over $50 billion. And there's nothing anybody can show you they use the money for. Nothing. They are constructing railway. China is building rail. Kiniko is building this. And by the time Bokwari, including the second Niger bridge they lied about, by the time Bokwari was leaving, none of them is up to 60% completion. They shall ruined Nigeria, destroyed everything enough. Is that you? One sec. So enough that when these criminals came, they make it worse. Here is Shettima, begging the world, United Nations to forgive Nigeria debts. What is the correlation? What is the relationship between APC that actually dipped Nigeria into indebtedness and the military that dipped, Mo, listen to that. I'm coming back. Shettima.
We are aware of the debilitating impacts of corruption on global prosperity and national progress. Process of corruption and illicit financial flows constitute a huge chunk of resources needed for sustainable development. The recovery and return of such funds to states of origin is a fundamental principle of the United Nations Convention Against Corruption. Therefore, the international community must promote practical measures to strengthen international cooperation to recover and return stolen assets and to eradicate safe havens that facilitate illicit flows of funds from developing countries to the developed economies. There is also the urgent need to promote fair and inclusive tax regimes in the world. Nigeria helped introduce the resolution on promotion of inclusive and effective international tax cooperation at the UN. We acknowledge the progress made in the adoption of the terms of reference of the UN Framework Convention on Tax Cooperation. We should deepen this initiative and work towards a UN Framework Convention on Tax Cooperation. Similarly, we must ensure that any reform of the international financial system includes comprehensive debt relief measures to enable sustainable financing for development. Countries of the Global South cannot make meaningful economic progress without special concessions and a review of their current debt burden. The present administration pays due regard to the imperatives of creating a conducive national environment for investment and the ease of doing business. Last year, President Bola Ahmed Tinubu signed 4 executive orders to curb double taxation. The government also established the Presidential Task Force on review of fiscal policy and tax reform. These measures are geared towards not only boosting investor confidence in Nigeria, but also to ensure investors make reasonable profit from their investments. Mr. President, Your Excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen, while the world is transitioning into the 4th industrial revolution Africa remains energy deficient. The push for the accelerated implementation of SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, therefore, must take into account Africa's precarious situation. Nigeria believes that natural gas remains central to the search for solutions to the energy challenges that Africa and the international community face. Access to affordable, reliable, cleaner sources of energy is more than an environmental or developmental issue. It is a key factor in social peace and international security. Mr. President, Nigeria remains unwavering in its commitment to SDG 13, climate